I'm Dr. Anita Pandey from Sri Shankaracharya Mahavidyalaya, Jinwani, and today I'm going to tell you all about globalization. So let's first start with introduction. So globalization is the process of interaction and integration among people, companies, and the government worldwide. Globalization is a global phenomenon which has made the world as near as a village. It has made the world smaller due to various facilities such as internet, international trade, and within the purview of many international organizations like World Trade Organizations who have totally facilitated this entire process. So in a way, and it is also said that internet has made the entire world just one click away. So these are all those factors which have contributed to globalization. Now, globalization has accelerated since the 18th century due to advances in transportation and communication technology. This increase in global interaction has caused a growth in international trade and exchange of ideas and cultures. When you meet many people of different ethnicities and belonging to different countries, different cultures, etc., you get to know their way of thinking, their way of living their lives. And the same is true with businesses also. As the world is integrating more and more nowadays, people are adopting the better practices, better business practices, or better technology of other countries, of other organizations. And this has brought the world together in a true sense. So, globalization is primarily an economic process of interaction and integration that is associated with social and cultural aspects. Now, this globalization has both a social and cultural aspect as well, and it doesn't just affect economic position of a country or a group of people. However, conflicts and diplomacy are also a large part of the history of globalization and of modern globalization. And of course, wherever there is any development of these kinds on such a mass, huge level, there is also involved politics and diplomacy. That is, the relation between two countries or maybe two continents, etc. Now let us look at the scope of globalization. Economically, globalization involves goods, services, data, technology, and economic resources of capital. Nowadays, businesses are, you have heard about foreign direct investments, right? So, nowadays, even businesses can raise fund abroad in the form of, see, American depository receipt or global depository receipt. It is not something rare or unique if an Indian company raises capital from Luxembourg Stock Exchange, or maybe has interaction with Securities and Exchange Commission of America, right? So it is all a contribution of globalization. The expansion of global markets liberalizes the economic activities of the exchange of goods and funds. And of course, these transactions between people of various countries have liberalized the market. They are no longer constrained, dependent only on the domestic people or the people of that particular citizens of that particular country. So, removal of cross border trade barriers has made the formation of global markets more feasible. Feasible means easier, right? So, global markets are more accessible nowadays to people. Now, advances in transportation like locomotive, steamship, jet engine, container ship, and developments in telecommunication infrastructure like telegraph, internet, mobile phones have been major factors in globalization and have generated further interdependence of economic and cultural activities around the globe. Now, these recent developments in technology, like you are sitting here, but you can talk face to face with a person sitting in, say, United Kingdom through means of teleconferencing or video conferencing, right? So, even see, Companies Act 2013, if you look at Companies Act 2013, it has specific provisions for enabling video conferencing and even board meetings. So the world is changing and globalization is a part of it. Now let's look at types of globalization. So types of globalization are as follows. Now here I have only categorized three major types of globalization. There are very many subdivisions as well, but let us look at it from a broader perspective. So first is economic globalization, which is economic globalization is the increasing economic interdependence of national economies across the world through a rapid increase in cross-border movement of goods, services, technology, and capital. Now, let us look at the recent example of Rafale. India has purchased Rafale from France. It is a perfect example of economic globalization because these kind of depending on our manufacturing firms in India, many manufacturing firms in India depend on Japan for technology. So that is also a perfect example of economic globalization because these kind of transactions are increasing interdependence, economic interdependence of various nations on each other. Whereas the globalization of business is centered around diminution of international trade regulation as well as tariffs, taxes, and other impediments that suppresses global trade. Economic globalization is the process of increasing economic integration between countries leading to the emergence of a global marketplace or a single world market. Now see, tariffs, taxes, etc., like export duties, import duties, these are impediments in the way of impediments means obstructions or hurdles, right? So these are impediments in the way of globalization. So, but on the other hand, these can't be totally removed. So there has to be a balance, and despite this balance, globalization is now growing at a rapid pace and is becoming a global phenomenon. It is already a global phenomenon, but it is developing at a rapid pace. Sorry. Depending on the paradigm, economic globalization can be viewed as either a positive or negative phenomenon. Now, see, anything has both pros and cons as well. Now, whereas this the positive effect of this phenomenon, globalization, are many. Like it is easier to raise capital abroad. People are getting more avenues to raise capital. Then people can transact for raw materials, technologies, etc. So it has made business easier. While on the same hand, those companies or those small firms, small businesses who can't afford to go global are getting affected. So that is a negative phenomenon of globalization because they don't have access to that many resources or that quality of resources that a multinational entity can afford. Now let us look at cultural globalization. Cultural globalization refers to transmission of ideas, meanings, and values around the world in such a way as to extend and intensify social relations. This process is marked by the common consumption of cultures that have been diffused by the internet, popular culture media, and international travel. This has added to the process of commodity exchange and colonization, which have a longer history of carrying cultural meaning around the globe. Now, see, globalization, the people are migrating from this country to that country, from their home country to some other country. This has led to expansion of cultural boundaries. Now if you go to say UK or US, it is not something rare or something rarely found that you find a say Indian restaurant there serving typical Indian food and people are liking them. So what is this? This is cultural globalization. See, so this diffusion of culture through be it through internet, be it through people who have migrated there, or be it through international travel, that may be just for the purpose of tourism. The diffusion of this knowledge, this culture, this trend has consumed the whole wide world. This has added to process of commodity exchange also. People, even foreigners, are interested in in maybe wearing the saris. Saris are especially liked in these kind of, so this is an example of cultural globalization. The circulation of cultures enables individuals to partake in extended social relations that cross national and regional borders. So these also affect business, and this leads to extension of that social relations across nations. The creation and expansion of such social relations is not merely observed on a material level. It is not just on a material level, but also on the basis on an intellectual parameter as well. The third is political globalization. Now, anything has definite political shade to it. So, political globalization refers to growth of worldwide political system both in size and complexity. The system includes national governments, their governmental and intergovernmental organizations, as well as government independent elements of global civil society such as international non-governmental organizations and social movement organizations. One of the key aspects of the political globalization is the declining importance of nation state and the rise of other factors on the political and the rise of other actors on the political scene. See, now some people are active on international political scene. These are the factors which have led to political globalization. It has led to worldwide political system, the growth of political system both in size and complexity. There are international courts, international arbitration centers for solving disputes. Then there are agencies like United Nations. These are also where politics happens a lot. The countries engage in politics diplomacy, right? So this is a type of political globalization. Now William R. Thompson has defined it as the expansion of a global political system and its institution in which interregional transactions are managed, right? And it is certainly not limited only to trade. It has wider connotation in every aspect. Now let us look at dimensions of globalization. Now dimensions of globalization come from movement of people, movement of information, and of course diseases, which we have seen we are undergoing a very recent example of. Now first look at movement of people. An essential aspect of globalization is movement of people, and state boundary limits on that movement have changed across history. Now, the developments in technology and transportation infrastructure, such as jumbo jets, low cost airlines, and more accessible airports, have made movement of people between various countries more affordable. Tourism, immigration, international education, etc., cause movement of people between various countries. Now, say 100 years back, it was rather difficult to imagine going from one country to another. There were ships, of course, there were ships like Titanic. You all must have heard of Titanic, but then again, only very rich could afford them. Those luxury streamers, there were many like that. Or if poor people were to travel, then they had to travel in very subpar positions, or even in they couldn't travel. Now, due to advancement of technology, the infrastructure, and any rate the means of transportation have become more affordable. It has enabled tourism, immigration, and travel of people from various countries to other countries to for various reasons like this tourism, immigration, international education, etc. So it is one of the main dimensions of globalization. Now, movement of information. The internet has been instrumental in connecting people across geographical boundaries. Now you can just click and send an email across to any country from anywhere in the world. So what has it done? Or you can talk to any person face to face through video conferencing. So this internet has enabled the dissemination of information on a global level, and it has made it very feasible across geographical boundaries to connect people. For example, Facebook is a social networking site which has more than 1.65 billion monthly active users as of 31st March 2016. Now it must have maybe doubled till now. Globalization can be spread by global journalism also, which provides massive information and relies on internet to interact. Now, of course, due to globalization, no country lives in isolation. If something happens in say USA, its impact definitely comes on India, right? So, and that is why people are interested in knowing what is going on there. So information also has a very important role to play in this globalization. Now, globalization and disease. This is a third example and a third dimension. And the recent example is coronavirus disease, which started just in Wuhan in November 19, and now it has taken the whole world. It has captured the whole world, right? So globalization, it is one of the repercussions, you can say, of globalization. Now let us look at some benefits and risks of globalization. Benefits are of course economies of scale. People are producing massively, and they have technology, they have resources, so they are benefiting on economies of scale. Their cost of production is getting lower. Technological innovation, of course, technology is one of the biggest factor, one of the biggest benefit of globalization. Technological innovation has increased leaps and bounds. Then there is foreign direct investment, just as I mentioned. You can now raise capital from abroad easily. Well, maybe not easily, but still you can raise abroad, which was something which couldn't have been contemplated, say, maybe 10 or 20 years back, right? Now this risk, so of course with anything there is also risk, and since globalization is such a wider phenomena which has the whole world in its capture, of course its risk will have that wide impact. So inequitable distribution, of course globalization has again increased the gap between poor and the rich, because just as I said, MNEs have multinational entities have have access to n number of resources, and that is where these local firms which are smaller and which don't have access to that much of resources or that quality of resources, they're not able to compete with those multinational entities, and that is why their maybe their business gets scrapped, right? So that has increased the gap between these rich and poor. And threat to sovereignty, of course there is threat to sovereignty. People are integrating on such a scale that there is the individuality of a country, their own sense of self is somewhere sometimes get threatened. And then there is interdependence. Of course interdependence is both has both negative and positive connotations, and this interdependence may have a negative impact in the, say, in case of war, right? Like in the warlike situation which we developed with Pakistan back when during Pulwama attack. There was a time when our aeroplanes, like airplanes from India, were prohibited from entering the airspace of Pakistan, and which was the cause of huge losses that were incurred by our airlines. Why? Because they had to take a wider route and they couldn't have raised their rates or whatever, their ticket rates they couldn't have raised, and they had to take a longer route to go the same way. So Indian Airlines incurred a lot of losses during that time when we were prohibited from entering the Pakistani airspace. So these are, of course, this interdependence causes there is risk. There are sometimes we incur losses also, but okay, these are the both benefits and risk, and anything has benefits and risk. So globalization has this impact on economic growth. So this is enough for today. Thank you.